Hello, everybody. Welcome. We hate to break up great conversation, but we have lots of things to cover together. So I want to welcome you to the 2023 Fall Showcase and Awards program that's hosted by the IUPUI Center for Translating Research into Practice in partnership with the Office of Community Engagement. We're so delighted that you're here to celebrate research that's interdisciplinary, involves students, community members, and faculty, and generates or uses generated knowledge to solve complex problems. I'm Steve Vieweg, and I'm the Associate Director of the Center. It's my pleasure to host this year's Showcase and Awards presentation with the amazing support of my colleague that many of you have met, Nuri McLucas. Thank you, Nuri, for all you've done. So we hope that you'll learn more about this, about the amazing translational community engaged scholarship here in our campus. And one way to do that is to follow us on social media. And we'll take you any way you prefer. You can do it by Facebook, X, Instagram. You can even check out our YouTube channel. And certainly we hope you visit us at trip.iupui.edu. So a quick reminder to set your cell phones to stun. Speaking of social media, you can be on your phone here, but you don't want to be interrupted. Take a break. Just take a break, even from social media. Now, we are grateful for our founders, Chancellor Emeritus Charles R. Bantz and Dr. Sandra Petronio, Emeritus Professor in Communication Studies. Their passion and commitment to translational community engaged scholarship is the foundation of our work at the Center. And although they can't be here with us today in person, we have a video greeting from them, so please enjoy.
Good afternoon. Sandra and I are here today to welcome you to this Translating Research into Practice Showcase, the Fall Showcase. And we're here sharing our enthusiasm. Sandra had the idea to begin the TRIP Center many years ago. In our earliest years here at IUPUI, she pointed out that this was a campus that was the most translational of any that we had worked on. And since we had worked on land grants and ones also in the urban areas, this was a fairly strong statement about the level of commitment of our colleagues to doing translational work. She was right, of course. She was right about the idea of the center, and with Steve Vieweg, they built this center and the kind of events that you're participating in here today. Today's showcase is actually another opportunity to hear from your colleagues and mine about the work they've been doing in the community and in the nation, bringing translational work to life. We encourage you to take the time to view the posters, talk with the authors, talk with each other. We've been startled over the years by some of the very best things that happen are that people meet each other on a campus that they didn't know were there, that they take that time and get that interaction, and that they're able to learn from each other. We also hope you'll be inspired, as we have been, by the amazing work of this year's Bantz-Petronio Translating Research into Practice Award winner. And Professor Holly Cusack-McVeigh has done amazing work in reparations of stolen art and objects, and obviously remains as well. In doing so, she engaged an amazing number of students. She took a stand that was not well received by many of a certain political persuasion. And she taught, I think, us all about the importance of engaging in fundamental work to try and right what have been wrongs, and frankly, in this case, illegal activities. We also hope that you'll be excited about the opportunities that the projects that are underway by this year's Bantz Communities Fellow and Community Scholar Award winners, and you'll get an opportunity shortly to hear some more about them. Sandra and I offer our congratulations to these award winners, Liz Reiter-Reed and her co-PI Laura Holzman with the Fellow Award, and Professor Sophia Wang and Professor Veronica Derricks for the Scholar Award. These are really important projects that we think deserve a lot of attention, and we're really pleased that the award has the resources currently to be able to support this kind of work for next year. This year, as it is in this case. To all of you there, thanks for your translational work and your support of your colleagues doing those work, and we wish you the best. At this point in our now retired position, we are happy to say, onward. Please take it forward, do the work. It makes an enormous difference. Thank you very much.
We thank Charles and Sandra for their ongoing commitment to our campus and community. And now at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome our interim chancellor, Carol Ann Murdoch-Kinch, to the stage. She began her tenure at Indiana University when she was named the 10th dean of the School of Dentistry in 2019. Professor in the IU School of Dentistry, she earned her DDS from Dalhousie University in Halifax, Canada, and she earned her PhD from the IU School of Dentistry. So please join me in welcoming a fellow IUPUI alum, Interim Chancellor Carol Ann Murdoch-Kinch, to the stage.
Thank you for that introduction, Steve, and for the energy and commitment you bring to the Center for Translating Research into Practice. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon as we celebrate the value of translational research to the Indianapolis campus, the community, and beyond. I'm delighted to welcome all of you. One of the images that many people connect with universities is the ivory tower. People imagine university professors as disconnected from the real world, pursuing their scholarly interests without much thought to the outside world and to everyday problems. I'm proud to say that on this campus, we don't embrace that ivory tower concept. We build bridges between our research and the world around us. And one of those bridges is translational research. This kind of research, taking discoveries from the bench to the bedside, from the classroom to the community, is part of our DNA at IUPUI, and it really changes people's lives. The COVID-19 pandemic has offered us recent, powerful lessons about the importance of translational research. Our teams across IUPUI worked to develop diagnostic tools, designed the state's coronavirus data hub, launched the first statewide prevalence study in the nation, and expanded contact tracing for the city of Indianapolis. This is just a fraction of the translational research that I could highlight. Of course, my discipline is dentistry, and my experience with multidisciplinary, collaborative, clinical, and translational research has repeatedly shown to me the importance and the value of translational research. I'm grateful that the IUPUI Center for Translating Research into Practice creates an environment here where this type of research can thrive. Events like today's trip showcase shine a spotlight on some of the impressive work being done across campus that connects with and makes a difference in our world. It highlights the public value of what we do at Indiana University. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Professor of Anthropology, Susan Hyatt, who will introduce the next element in this afternoon's program. Please help me welcome Professor Hyatt.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm charged with the difficult task of memorializing our colleague, Paul Mullins, who was an outstanding scholar of translational research. I think there's a video, Nori, yeah? Okay, I'll just start. On Tuesday, on Tuesday, October 3rd, the heading of the Indy Star read, quote, "Marker preserves the story of lynching." The victim of that lynching, who was commemorated on the marker, was one John Tucker, who had been beaten to death in 1845 by a white mob as he walked down Washington Street along what is now the Cultural Trail. According to the article, participants in the unveiling of this marker included, among others, members of the Indiana Remembrance Coalition. Last year, this group had also organized the memorialization of another lynching victim, George Tompkins. George Tompkins was hanged in Riverside Park 100 years ago. His death had originally been recorded as a suicide. The story of George Tompkins' ghastly murder and of the cover-up by city officials that followed the discovery of his body was first brought to public attention by Paul Mullins in a blog he had published on his site, Invisible Indianapolis, on November 1st, 2016. I don't know whether Paul ever knew the story of the lynching of John Tucker that seems to have recently come to light. Paul passed away tragically of a malignant brain tumor on April 16th, 2023, at the age of 60. Paul had joined the faculty at IUPUI in 1999, and in his 24 years here, he became the preeminent historian of the color line on our campus and in the city. He was the recipient of multiple awards, including the Bantz Community Fellowship, which I was honored to share with him during the inaugural year of this program, 2016-2017. What made Paul's work translational was not only its interdisciplinarity, it was also his commitment to sharing his research findings and his methods with community residents. He was an astonishingly prolific writer, and while he published a significant corpus of scholarly works, he also valued his blog posts because they were accessible to a wide readership. More often than not, they provoked public discussion, debates, and renewed commitments to acknowledging, when possible, and rectifying the wrongs of the past. Paul's imaginative use of digital resources led to many of his discoveries about what he and I refer to in our Bantz Fellowship project as Invisible Indianapolis. He was glad to provide anyone who inquired with detailed but easy to follow instructions, showing them how they could use the same tools he did to carry out explorations of their own invisible histories. In this way, he demonstrated how scholarship can be used to support grassroots movements for social and racial justice. At this present moment, we are standing at another critical crossroads in the history of our institution. The imminent division of our university into two campuses, IUI and Purdue at Indianapolis, means that there'll be a surge of new investment on the west side. Our neighbors, many of whose families were once displaced from the area now occupied by our current campus, are understandably concerned. We now have an opportunity to collectively create a new history for our institution and for the neighborhoods that lie just west of us. By listening to local residents and descendants' concerns and allying with them. Yet, in a newspaper article published in the Indy Star this past July, an IU official, anticipating significant new development along Indiana Avenue, speculated about the potential for new housing and amenities for students. Quote, "That becomes really important because there are a lot of exciting mixed-use ideas that will serve IU students, but they don't necessarily need to be on campus," he said. This is the kind of statement that Paul would have challenged immediately. Just prior to the onset of his illness, he wrote an extensive entry on the history of Indiana Avenue that appears in the newly revised Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. At the time of his death, he was working on a book about Indiana Avenue and its importance to the African American community. Paul was a wonderful friend and a supportive mentor to many of his colleagues at IUPUI and beyond. In a few minutes, you will hear from some of those colleagues. Through their remarks about their own work, Holly Cusack-McVeigh, winner of the 2023 Bantz-Petronio Translating Research into Practice Award, And our new Bantz Community Fellows, Liz Kreider-Reed and Laura Holtzman, will demonstrate that not only are they brilliantly carrying on Paul's legacy of engaged scholarship, they are also contributing their own path-breaking innovations and insights into the mission of translational research. Paul's work encouraged us to understand that urban landscapes, as we see them today, are always recent inventions that have been shaped by generations of policies, programs, and practices that were unevenly and frequently unjustly implemented. His goal in doing this work was not only to uncover the hidden histories of the past, but also to encourage people to use that knowledge to imagine and bring into being new visions for the future. Because he gave us the tools to do so and the vision for understanding why this is so important, we owe it to him to carry on that essential work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for helping us honor our esteemed colleague and friend, not to mention amazing scholar and community partner. I know that was hard, but thank you for doing that. So as we move into the celebration piece today, you've heard there's many people to honor and learn more about. We want to point out, our folks at home can't see this, but if you can see on the table here, you see some what looks like very interesting objects. And a couple of these are the awards that we'll be handing out today, and they were designed by commission of Charles and Sandra by some students at Heron School of Art to in honor of the awardees. So there's been great thought put into these. So you might want to take a look at these afterwards. Be sure to come up to the awardees and say, can I take a look at that? Find out more about what it is. All right, so to get started, I would like to invite Dr. Richard Brandon Friedman from the School of Social Work, who was named the Bantz Community Scholar in 2022 to help announce this year's winner. So please welcome Dr. Brandon Friedman. He'll give a brief update and introduce this year's winner. Come on up.
All righty, for my project, we did a nice extension. The Bantz people were very nice. They gave us a little extension. And so my project is just finishing this year. We've done we had some delays due to the Indiana legislature having some difficulties with gender diverse individuals and delaying our recruitment. But we are going to have our data soon, and we will be able to provide it by the end of this academic year. So I've also been asked to introduce Dr. Wang, who is the Wesley P. Martin Scholar in Alzheimer's Education and an Associate Professor of Clinical Psychiatry in the IU School of Medicine. And her colleague is Veronica Derricks, who's an assistant professor of psychology, I guess, in the Purdue School of Science, and she is not able to be here today. They received the 2023 Scholar Award for their research that educates minority communities about the value of early detection of Alzheimer's. It is for a pilot project called Be Smart. And so I will let her take the stage and tell you more about it. Oh, first she's got a video. Then she will come talk.
More than 2 million older Americans from racial and ethnic minoritized groups have early-stage Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementias. With the advent of novel disease-modifying treatments for Alzheimer's disease, ensuring that all communities have equal access to these treatments is essential. Unfortunately, many older adults in these communities do not become aware of their disease until it is too late for them to benefit from these new medications. As a physician specializing in Alzheimer's disease, my goal is to make educational resources available for these at-risk communities so they can learn more about the importance of early detection of Alzheimer's disease and the benefits of cognitive screening. Together with my colleagues at the NIA-funded Indiana Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, our diverse team of physicians, social psychologists, and neuropsychologists have joined with our partners based in Indianapolis, the John Bonner Center, the Edna Martin Christian Center, and SECOA, to empower these communities to be part of developing and testing our new education program about participating in healthy lifestyles to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease and how to access free cognitive screening.
Black Americans are about 2 to 3 times more likely to have Alzheimer's disease and other dementias than white Americans. and these statistics are troubling and point to a need for the prevention and early detection of Alzheimer's disease. As a social psychologist, I was inspired to collaborate with Sophia and our community partners on this project because there are a lot of educational materials about cognitive screening and Alzheimer's disease, but this information doesn't always focus on the questions and content that minoritized communities are most interested in. One of the key goals of this project is ensuring that community members have access to cognitive screening and that they understand what the results of these tests mean so that we can identify signs of Alzheimer's disease as early as possible.
People should care about this type of research because people are living longer, and the chances are greater now of someone you know starting to show signs of Alzheimer's disease, and we need to be able to recognize these signs.
This research project brings much needed information to older adults as well as their families in the community about Alzheimer's disease. The sessions are offered by experts in the industry presented in a comfortable setting. There's no fee for monthly participation. Our first discussion in November covered understanding memory changes as you age. Some of the other discussions that we've had covered are the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia, Alzheimer's and medications, how to talk to your doctor about your health concerns, and Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular risk factors. The community is able to get information about research, its benefits, and the impact it can have.
I am personally passionate about this program in that we have to make Alzheimer's disease research representative. It's really an essential part of what we do. We devote a lot of our effort to this, and any help that we can get, including that from the Bantz research program, is very meaningful to us.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, gracias. Thank you to all the donors that are supporting this important work. I believe that addressing different health disparities across different stigmatized groups is really important, particularly at topics such as dementia and Alzheimer's. So thank you so much for your contribution, and I really believe that this project is going to impact multiple people in not only this generation but also future generations. Thank you.
Well, I just want to take a moment again to thank everybody for being here and for those who made a contribution to the Bantz Awards. These are really important. I also want to take a moment to thank our community partners, John's Bonner Center and the Martin Christian Center, as well as SECOA. But I also want to take a moment to value the importance of in-person connectivity. I was actually having a long day in clinic because as a geriatric psychiatrist, one of the most difficult things I have to do is to tell people that their Alzheimer's is so advanced that they have to put them into a nursing home. And the amount of emotional heartbreak and financial distress it creates is very terrible. And on February 2022, there was actually a monthly release for a TRIP scholar. And I happened to read it, and it was about how can healthcare professionals do a better job of communicating about disease and work they're doing. And I thought, well, if I could do a better job and teach my physician colleagues and other healthcare professionals on how we could prevent this disease, I wouldn't have to have so many of these conversations. So I sent an email to my colleague, Veronica Derricks, who you're going to hear from. And I said, I need some help. And I said, I need help of the type that you can provide on how to work with these diverse communities more effectively. And that was the beginning of a really great relationship. So after this, please take the time to talk to somebody that you wouldn't normally ever talk to or intersect, because you never know how it could begin and how you could help the communities, and how this award can ensure that people can remain in the community and not end up getting placed in a nursing home or assisted living facility, because we truly need our communities to be multi-generational with the wisdom as people age. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Derricks. I'm an assistant professor in the psychology department at IUPUI and co-PI of the Be Smart Intervention Project. So I'd like to start by extending my deep gratitude to all of the donors who funded the Charles R. Bantz Scholar Award and to the TRIP Center for this honor. I deeply appreciate your continued support and dedication to community-engaged research and to scholarship that transforms knowledge into practices and solutions. One of the reasons why I became a researcher is that I wanted to pursue research questions and develop interventions that are specifically designed to support minoritized populations. I became especially interested in work around health disparities when I realized the persistence of these gaps and the implications of these gaps for outcomes like quality of life and life expectancy. So, for example, we know that Black, Hispanic, and Latina adults are disproportionately affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, such that these groups are more likely to be diagnosed with the disease, and they're diagnosed at later stages of the disease. So it's really important to focus on early detection of Alzheimer's disease and steps that can be taken to try to lower the risk of developing Alzheimer's. The funding from this award will allow us to conduct research that addresses this important social problem. Over the next year, I'm really excited to work with our community partners and community members to develop an educational intervention that will be used to increase participation in cognitive screening. A key implication of this intervention is that increasing participation in cognitive screening will help support the early detection of Alzheimer's disease. One aspect of this project that's particularly meaningful to me is that we'll be developing the educational intervention alongside Black, Hispanic, and Latina community members. Leveraging the voices and perspectives of community members is important because we can ensure that their preferences and identified information needs are incorporated throughout the intervention. So I'd just like to end by giving a huge thank you to our community partners at SEQOA, the Edna Martin Christian Center, and the John Bonner Neighborhood Center. I'd also like to thank all of the faculty, staff, and leadership at the Indiana Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, the IUPUI School of Science, and the students who are supporting this project. We look forward to sharing the results of this work with the larger Indianapolis community in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Derricks, who can't be here, but please ask some more questions. At the end of today, you'll still be around. So if people have other questions, you could ask any of our scholars and engage them in conversation. So now I'm at the place where we're going to invite Dr. Lonnie Silva to come to the stage to share her work and introduce the 2023 Bantz Community Fellow Award.
So, update on my work. Well, I received the Bantz Community Fellow Award last year, and the objective was to serve 70 people at outreach, along with 14 high-risk individuals that were getting out of federal prison. I'm happy to report that we only had 2 folks out of our federal cohort recidivate, and of course, those are the highest risk. They were between the ages of 18 to 24, Black males living in high crime areas, hotspot zones around the city. And they're always, you know, the saddest cases for us because we try to infuse folks with resources and, you know, it's harder with the young folks. The other folks, however, did not recidivate. So we were really pleased with those results. In terms of outreach, we actually had an explosion. So we said we would serve 70 people, and we did allocate those 70 participants in our outreach program to Bantz as we properly should have. We ended up serving 2,000 people over a year's time. That's a lot of people. And with the Bantz Fellowship, we were really able to bring in a social work component, which was the highlight of the project. And that social work component allowed us to provide social services at a kind of higher and deeper degree with our federal cohort of participants, and also to provide social work services at lots going on today, huh? Lots going on. And it also allowed us to provide social work services to folks at outreach. So we were able to provide homelessness information, food, and other things to an outreach that was really, the priority is to provide people with driver's license assistance, expungement screening, and to remove child support holds off folks' licenses. So we were able to double down on the services. We closed out the Bantz project in July. We provided the Bantz committee with a report. We spent every single penny, right? But it was really great. And from last year's experience in the past couple of years, we applied for a grant, and that grant garnered $2.6 million to continue this work, which is a really big deal. That's translation, right? And so I hope Professor Hyatt I hope, Professor Hyatt, that Dr. Mullins would be proud of that work. We're really trying to help people in these hotspot zones, and we're also taking that model. And I was just telling Dr. McGee and Ms. Yates that we are taking, a foray into the violence arena now, right? Trying to reduce violence in the city, and we've adopted the model that we created and designed for Bantz. We worked with the MLK Center, Edna Martin as well, Brightwood Community Center, the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, just to name a few of the organizations. So it does take a village. With that, I'd really like to introduce the Chancellor's Community Fellow Awardees. I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Kreider-Reed and Dr. Laura Holzman, both professors here, in their wonderful project about Indiana's toxic heritage, or Indianapolis's toxic heritage, pollution, place, and power. And so I found this really interesting. The problem that they've identified is that there's a toxic heritage here in this city, and it's really residue from the lead industry, coal and ash and heavy metals from power plants, raw sewage in urban waterways, and contaminated groundwater from gas stations. And so they're really trying to bring information and public awareness to this problem, because it really does, it not only affects communities of color, it impacts all of us. And so we're all living in this kind of toxic heritage, and their objectives are to kind of situate this environmental damage as heritage, to demonstrate that this is a citywide heritage problem, and to help, really educate a broader public audience on how to understand this toxic legacy and register it as a landscape. The goal of the project is to promote action through community organizations. I think it's going to be a great project. I can't wait to see what your results are. And so please come in and receive your award.
I think this idea of toxic heritage is sometimes a little bit hard to wrap your brain around, but ultimately it's about human rights, that everybody deserves the right to live in a safe, healthy place, and people should care about it regardless of where they live, because our history has been such that not everybody has equal access to safe, healthy places. So raising up the stories of the neighborhoods that have borne burden after burden over decades, where it's the places where we site our dumps, where polluted soils and contaminants are allowed to accumulate because they are places with maybe less political power, that those are stories that we really need to tell and everybody needs to care about, so that we can move forward to create more equitable and safe and healthy neighborhoods for everyone.
So for the Indy Toxic Heritage Project, we are collaborating with a number of partners, including Indy Parks and Recreation and the Kepru Institute, and of course the Museum Studies program, to create an exhibition that looks at environmental harm and advocacy for change in Indianapolis. There are a number of organizations and individuals who have been doing very important environmental justice work in our city. Often the stories of environmental damage and advocacy are concentrated in specific neighborhoods or with specific groups that are involved in those initiatives. What we're going to be doing is connecting those dots to tell a story that really points to toxic heritage as part of Indianapolis's citywide history, identity, and future.
Our city has a long history, and a lot of it is very industrial and very commercial, and that has left scars on the environment. A lot of people think about the environment as something separate from the human world, and that distinction is a fallacy. We live in the natural environment. The human world is built on the natural environment and in the natural environment. So anything that's going on in the quote-unquote natural world affects the human world. We also understand that these impacts that have been left on the natural environment in our community, in our city, they don't just affect the trees and the soil and the birds and the bees. They affect us as well. And so any project that allows us to have more awareness of the makeup of the environment, the potential that it has, the threats that it holds, ways that anything that increases our agency to change and influence that, anything that does that is a benefit.
And so I feel like we're part of it because we've all worked so well together in the past, because our philosophical underpinning is community engagement. It is also about doing our very best job to research, investigate, and to show the community, but it's to involve the community in putting that information together so that then the community comes and see themselves reflected in the work that they've done. And then they take it around to show it to others, which encourages others to, this is, if it is to be, it is up to us. And it starts with engagement and sensitivity of the masses, of which I'm proudly one.
Thank you. We are so honored to have the support of the Bantz Fellowship for our collaborative project on Indianapolis's toxic heritage. Liz and I are here on stage to accept this award, but of course, this work would not be happening without our amazing community partners and co-creators. Our partners are, as you've seen, the Kepper Institute and Indy Parks and Recreation, where we have the joy of working with Kavitha Mahoney, who is Indy Parks Chief Strategy Officer and a proud graduate of the Museum Studies program. We are also working with community-based scholars Kayla Austin and Kay Hawthorne. Ben Clark, a PhD student in American Studies, is another key member of our project team. We are really glad to be working with this amazing group that brings such deep and varied expertise to our project.
This project's also part of longstanding work, so we're incredibly grateful to our respective deans, Tammy Idle in the School of Liberal Arts and Greg Hull in the Heron School of Art and Design. And along with our colleagues, these leaders have supported community-engaged teaching and research, not just in the Bantz Fellowship year, but as integral to our work and mission. It's so valuable to have leaders who recognize the importance of this work and encourage it. We're especially fortunate to have so many colleagues and museum studies students, many of which are joining us in the back, who over the past decades have built a community of practice predicated on equity and working toward justice. Funding from the Bantz Fellowship is crucial to the success of this Indy Toxic Heritage project. So we want to give special thanks to everyone who's provided financial and administrative support for this opportunity. And we're also absolutely delighted to be able to thank Indiana Humanities, which is providing additional support for the project as well. So thank you.
It's quite amazing to listen to just these several examples of the Bantz Community Fellow and Scholar Awards. So check out the website to learn more about what these folks do. And a couple of them have mentioned that this has been a springboard to do some other amazing, great work. And so we appreciate all that you put into it, and that you hear that there's so much involvement with community partners, with students. Those are the things that are a part of our campus. So thank you all. Congratulations to our Fellow and Scholar Awards. So the Bantz-Petronio Translating Research into Practice Award was created by Sandra Petronio and Charles Bantz to recognize an outstanding translational scholar here on the IUPUI campus. This award was first presented in 2013, and honorees represent a wide variety of schools and research topics. And I was so surprised today to see our inaugural awardee here today, Dr. David Marrero. Thank you for joining. Yeah, clap for him. This is good. So at this point, I'd like to welcome the 2022 awardee, Dr. Todd Score from the School of Medicine, to present his information and this year's recipient. So welcome, Todd.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm from the School of Medicine and was lucky enough last year to receive this award and recognition. And so just a quick update on it. So the things that we've been doing is really translating our genetic findings into medicine. So patients are actually using genetic results to help reduce the adverse events and increase the efficacy of their drugs. And I'm happy to say that in the last year, we've now implemented another one of these genetic tests and translated it into practice. So patients who have colon cancer that get some of the chemotherapies are now getting tests to reduce their risk of getting some of the really bad toxic effects of some of those. But I think even on a bigger stage, and a more important thing is recognition through this and other things like this have really helped us convince IU Health and the School of Medicine that we really need a bigger genomic medicine council, which we've now established. That's a collaborative effort between the two, the school and the healthcare system, that really recognize that it's really difficult to implement and translate these genetic findings into practice. And so this genomic medicine council is really set up to help do all kinds of things, from establish the tests to educate the providers, work on the reimbursement, all the ethics and all kinds of stuff like this. So it's a bigger effort that is now being recognized to really help support all kinds of different things. So we look forward to, Dr. Wang and Dr. Sakin things, some of these like Alzheimer's genetic risk things that we can start implementing to get those patients onto treatments earlier and help prevent that. So I think it's, things where we can reach out and all kinds of different things. But you're not here to hear about me today. It's really an honor, and I'm pretty sure I can say this is the first time I've ever introduced somebody from the anthropology and museum studies as a geneticist. That's not one of the first things, but I think that it's an honor. I can't think of a better example, and I'd like to introduce today Holly Cusack-McVeigh, and congratulations on great work, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
I have to say, I know I'm watching these people in the front row who are in the videos, watching themselves. But I have to say, we really appreciate Nuri's effort to make these videos because it allows us to share this other. Yes, can you do it?
The project that I'm working on currently is embedded within the larger question of repatriation. The National NAGPRA Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 is decades old. We continue to fight around the world for the return of cultural heritage and ancestors. But when those returns come home to the community, Indigenous communities often discover, especially in the 1800s, those ancestors and those cultural items were treated with toxic chemicals, harmful chemicals like arsenic and mercury, and then in the 1930s, even things like DDT. And so imagine community members fighting so hard to bring their ancestors and their cultural heritage home, only to discover that they are harmful and potentially hazardous to the living community. And so the work that I'm doing now with Indigenous communities is working to identify those toxic chemical treatments prior to repatriation, prior to the return to communities. And in the case where items and ancestors have already been returned, to identify what they were treated with and how we might make the community and those returns safer. And it's on a case-by-case basis. Each is different depending on the kind of chemical treatment and the amount. So it's trying to identify where can Indigenous communities go for testing to identify what kind of hazard. The testing is complex, it's different for every hazard, known chemical treatment, and it's very costly, very expensive to the community. So it's working to bring together Indigenous communities, leaders, tribal historic preservation officers, but also allies in the field, allies in museum studies, allies in anthropology and other forms of academia, but also to take a cross-disciplinary approach to this research, to this problem, and work with, for example, the American Industrial Hygiene Association to recruit toxicologists, object conservators, to come together to build a multidisciplinary team to tackle this ongoing problem.
People should very much care about their health and their well-being, and this is something that I think a lot of folks don't necessarily think about when they're interacting with older objects. You know, nowadays we have a lot of rules and regulations, both federally and at state and local levels, to try to protect our health. But in the past, that was not necessarily the case. And so something that may be as simple as a family hat could potentially have the possibility of contaminants depending on how old it is and if it was ever treated and preserved. So often if it's something that looks fragile but is well preserved today, that's your first hint that there may be some sort of, you know, certainly some sort of preservative involved, but was that an older toxic or contaminated preservative? You know, a lot of times arsenic salts or mercury salts were used to preserve a number of different items. And again, we, just like asbestos started out as something that was, you know, great, we now know that that is a significant health hazard and causes a lot of health problems. So, and particularly for, you know, even folks who are antiquing, I'm not sure that that's something that they think about on a regular basis either, depending on the types of objects that they're interested in.
The benefits this project is bringing is what we receive is what we're gonna reuse back, put into our ceremonies. We have 12 different villages, so we have to look at what we get back, determine which village the object is from, contact their religious leaders if they want the items back. It's a hard job, but you know, I like what I'm doing.
Congratulations, come on up.
I wish to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Miami, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people. IUPUI stands on the historic homelands of the Native peoples and more recently, that of a vibrant Black community, also displaced. As an IUPUI scholar, my research is grounded in and across my teaching, my research, and my service activities. For decades, I've worked with and for Indigenous communities around the world, endeavoring to transform knowledge into practice that betters communities based on their identified priorities for our research activities. And for nearly a decade, my IUPUI undergraduate and graduate students have played a critical role in an ongoing FBI investigation for the art crime team, moving thousands of cultural heritage items from around the world, not once, but 4 times over the course of 10 years. My students help care for the looted cultural items and the ancestral remains of over 500 individuals. The seized material culture representing places as diverse as Cambodia, China, Colombia, Ecuador, Egypt, France, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Indonesia, Iraq, Italy, Morocco, Mexico, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Tibet, and various regions throughout the United States. For centuries, museums around the world have collected the scientific specimens and cultural heritage objects central to their mission. These tangible collections serve to tell compelling stories of people and places through time. However, we must acknowledge that this collecting is couched within a colonial past. Of course, museums are concerned with preserving the past, but sometimes preservation efforts come with unique and ongoing challenges. In North America, we have roughly a dozen pests, what we call in the museum world, the dirty dozen, that present real threats to museum collections, particularly organic collections, because the dirty dozen are proteinaceous feeders. The problem is that in the 1800s, museums addressed pest infestation by treating the items with heavy metal contaminants. And as the video mentioned, arsenic and mercuric salts were very common. By the 1930s and 40s, organic pesticides such as DDT were routinely employed. While museums rarely kept records of such chemical treatments, there was, as this popular cartoon suggests, surprisingly widespread public recognition that health hazards existed in the 1800s in a wide variety of household items, including books published in the mid-19th century. They were covered with what we call Paris green, a dye that contains arsenic. Arsenic-based pigments were commonly found in Victorian wallpaper, and mercury was employed in the process of felting fur hats. You may have heard of Mad Hatter's disease, which is chronic mercury poisoning. But what did these past chemical treatments have to do with Indigenous communities today? The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act of 1990 became law in 1990, and under this federal act, Native American tribes now reclaim their sacred items, their funerary objects, their objects of cultural patrimony, and it also ensures the return of ancestors who have been torn from their resting place. By enacting NAGPRA, Congress recognized that human remains of any ancestry must at all times be treated with dignity and respect. Unfortunately, with these returns comes the new problem, that is that repatriated objects have been made toxic. Repatriation is a global effort and the highest priority for Indigenous communities who are obligated to reclaim their ancestors and to restore their dignity following cultural practices and beliefs. Here, Iwi Maori elders and community members welcome home the human remains of their ancestors from museums overseas. As my colleague at Te Papa's National Museum in Wellington, New Zealand, Te Herakiki, who heads the repatriation team at Te Papa, notes, bringing his ancestors home has always been dangerous, and certain protocols, cultural protocols, must be followed. But now they are also dangerous because they've been poisoned. How can our research and our teaching activities at the local level make a difference globally? As an active member of the American Industrial Hygiene Association's Museum and Cultural Heritage Industry Working Group, I've forged new partnerships with Indiana Medical History Museum and the School of Health Sciences at Purdue University to address these hidden hazards in the Indianapolis area. With research support from IUPUI's Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research, this multidisciplinary collaboration allowed my graduate researchers to play an active role in this team-based approach to addressing health issues in collections worldwide. Our research activities at the Indiana Medical History Museum led to additional collaborations and team-based testing of items to be repatriated to Indigenous communities. Here, my students use XRF, X-ray fluorescence, to test for heavy metal contaminants before the FBI returns these items to Papua New Guinea. In May of 2022, my project partners and I presented our research at the American Industrial Hygiene Association's National Meetings and Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. Our graduate student team also presented their research poster at this conference. Dust, mold, and heavy metals, health hazards in museums won multiple national awards. As previously stated, this problem of toxic collections extends well beyond the walls of the museum. Toxic heritage collections pose real and ongoing dangers to Indigenous communities who care for and store these returns locally. Often these cultural items are returned to their intended daily and ceremonial lives. A mask, for example, may be sitting on a museum shelf one day and dancing in ceremony the next. This is another place where I've endeavored to translate my research into practice. Our team started working with local area museums to test for pesticides in NAGPRA-eligible collections before they are returned. Here, and with permission and guidance from the tribal authorities, my current community engagement associates prepare a Sioux medicine bag for XRF testing prior to repatriation. This past spring, we once again attended the American Industrial Hygiene Association's national meetings, where I co-facilitated a roundtable education session centered on the topic of toxic collections. I also invited my colleague, Lee Wayne Lomeestoa, who is the repatriation coordinator and tribal researcher for the Hopi Cultural Preservation Office, to speak to members of the American Industrial Hygiene Association's Workplace Health Without Borders Working Group and their Social Concerns Committee about these ongoing challenges. Following his excellent talk, our team conducted a pilot project. We were supposed to have a room reserved for this research activity in the hotel, but the association got nervous with the idea of bringing potentially contaminated items through the hotel lobby. So we improvised and conducted the necessary testing in the underground parking garage. I believe this experiment could lead to the development of mobile labs and more accessible, less invasive forms of testing at the community level. Here our team tests Hopi sacred beings who've already been repatriated but are feared to be contaminated. Note that the images of Hopi ceremonial beings are blurred because we, as an outside audience, are not initiated. Repatriation is an important form of restorative justice in the wake of a colonial past. But how can these returns support social justice and equality when these very returns threaten the health and safety of living descendant communities receiving this toxic heritage? Moving forward, what does the impact of my community-engaged translational research look like, and who will benefit? Informed by years of working with the EPA's tribal water quality trainings and NOAA tribal marine science community trainings, I'm exploring ways to design community-based workshops in and with affected tribal nations. Next month, tribal nations from around the country will gather in Shawnee, Oklahoma for the Association on American Indian Affairs 2023 conference under the theme of building a new fire. A fire that will, and I quote, bring healing from this theft against humanity and human rights, end quote. This in reference to looting, grave robbing, and even museum past collecting practices. Following my recent research activities, I've organized this upcoming panel, promoting an interdisciplinary team-based approach. Continued dialogue and collaboration are key. Elders, community leaders, tribal youth, museum staff, object conservators, anthropologists, industrial hygienists, toxicologists, epidemiologists, and other allies must address this serious threat and build this new fire together. This analogy of building a new fire is a strong one. It is at the heart of translational research. It's at the heart of my research and meaningful collaboration that stands to improve the health and well-being of Indigenous communities worldwide. It's my hope that our university will continue to uphold its commitment to the well-being of citizens of Indianapolis, the state of Indiana, and beyond. By fully understanding and supporting community engaged scholarship now and in the future. In closing, I wish to acknowledge the following individuals, community partners, programs, departments, and organizations that made this important translational research possible. I thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your amazing research. And as you can hear, all this work requires commitment, collaboration among faculty, staff, students, and community partners. Next, I would like to invite our dear colleague, Teresa Bennett from the Office of Community Engagement, to come forward and talk about how we often support these kinds of activities. Come forward, Teresa. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Did you learn something today? Something important. And something we should all support. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Am I doing it or? Oh, you're okay. I have been involved since the first award as the manager of the process, the selection process in the committee. And I've also been involved in the work and watching, listening, learning from all of you as we read all of these proposals and we read the amazing impact that's made through all of this work. And I just wanted to share, as the start of my remarks, I wanted to share graphically, just to look at all of these persons, 35 persons, faculty involved in the research so far. And if we go to these are our scholar awardees, and then our Bantz-Petronio awardees. These are all persons you know, and that we're learning from. And then if you look at this last slide, I don't even think this is fully representative of all of the community partners that those awardees have worked with, because I think one of you mentioned that that there are your official partners, and then there are the other contributors, and there are so many of those, and then there's the impact made on our community, and it's important that we continue to support this work. And so my job today is to ask you to give. It's easy to do. We have a lot of ways to do it. We have Giving Tuesdays. We have the campus activities around giving. We have these QR codes that you can use. You can give through a regular gift, a monthly gift, an annual gift, a one-time gift. You can talk to us and we'll help you if none of those things work for you. And it's really important that we continue this amazing program. We have a lot of you here who have been involved as judges, who have been involved as in addition to those who have worked on the projects. And I think you know and could speak to it. If you were up here, you contribute the same. And so once again, I'll say, if you have the means, please give to this program so that we can continue it. Thank you so much.
So now we've come to the time to end our awards presentation and transition to hear some about our transitional scholars who are here today. So we appreciate your support of these programs, and we're so glad that you could be here today. We look forward to the many community engaged projects and to future opportunities to share this amazing work and the outcomes of our many community engaged translational research activities. And this is the time we're going to thank our virtual audience for attending and joining us today. And we'll let them go because we're going to move here to the in-person piece. So thank you all for joining.